Welcome along to the Steve Wraith True Crime Podcast, and I'm joined today by my special guest, Terry Ellis. How are you, Terry?
Hello, Steve. Thanks for having me, mate.
Terry, thanks for coming on. You've got a fascinating story to tell. You've got a book out now, which we'll come to later. But let's go back to the start of your life. Where were you brought up, first of all?
I was brought up in Camden Town, close to the King's Cross, Camden Town. I've lived there all my life. It was a pretty poor area growing up. It was surrounded from King's Cross to Camden Town with warehouses, and I spent my whole childhood really just breaking into them. That was my foray into crime.
That's how you got started, breaking into houses, etc., around the locality.
Well, you know what it wasn't a house. We never broke into any houses. It was just warehouses. As I said, the area was very poor, but we had a lot to pick. A lot of choices in Camden. So from if you say King's Cross to Camden Town, you must have had 50 or 60 warehouses doing clothes, cakes, comics, electrical stuff, and whenever we needed anything, we just went and took it.
How old were you, Terry, when you started that?
I think I stole my first car when I was 10. Not to sell it. It was just a case of we did it for a laugh and just to prove to ourselves that we could steal them. And I was always getting in trouble as a young kid. I think it's because every family along my street were all poor. I say we had my family worked on the coal. We had another family that works on selling potatoes. Everyone had their thing, but the majority we was all poor. So we would, as kids, would subsidise our families by going out and just nicking. It was you had I think my mum was a professional shoplifter. My dad was an armed robber. So we just and everyone we knew was at it. So it was actually normal. So there wasn't nothing not normal about it. It was just the thing that everyone did.
It's a debate that runs and runs. A lot of people say that you're born naughty, but I mean, I've always thought that, to be honest, you're a product of the environment. And it sounds, obviously, with your mother being a shoplifter and your father being a robber, that you didn't really have a great start in life, and therefore you were a product of your environment.
I definitely totally agree with that. I think as a child, my dad left us before I was born, but he came back at times when I was naughty. He'd come down and Mum would call him and chastise me or give me an hiding. But my mum was she was a peculiar. She would wake me up in the middle of the night. She would ask me to break into warehouses and pass all the stuff out to her. And if I got caught, by the police, I was then beaten by her for getting caught. So I learned very, very early in life that it was okay to steal as much as I could bring home. But if I got caught, then that was wrong. So that was the thinking that we grew up with, and that wasn't just the case for me. It was the case for the whole street.
What was your first run-in with the law, Terry?
Pardon?
What was your first run-in with the police, with the law?
I think the first one for us was this. I nicked an MG sports car, and my mate nicked another car, and we drove it round to where I lived, and we started smashing into each other. The next thing I knew, there was loads of old bill there. My brother ran into my house. I slipped up the canal, and that was the first time that we were actually involved with the police coming around the house.
How did that make you feel?
I think it was, we was young. I didn't really give it a second thought. But it was just normal. The police were always coming around to the house. My mum was, she suffered from a few mental problems, and she when she wasn't trying to commit suicide, running in front of buses, she was causing a bit of mayhem in the street. So seeing the old bill in our street was nothing new, because every other neighbour had the same problem with their kids. We're talking about, if you imagine 15 kids going out every day just causing trouble, that was us.
Did the fear not get you? I mean, when I was younger, the way I was brought up, it was always, the police were to be feared. And I mean, we're probably a similar type of age. The police back in the old days were a lot bigger and wider and broader, and you know what I mean. They were a threat, whereas now you struggle to get a bobby who's regular size.
I think the one thing I do remember about the police in them days is they were pretty quick. They could run. I spent my my life running through warehouses, over the roofs, and them chasing me down drain pipes, fire escapes. But we was quite nimble. And we had we knew the back doubles, we knew everything. So to catch us, they had to be going some. We got caught a few times. I ended up in the police station. Ended up coming out there at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning after my mum had come or decided to come down and pick me up. Got the obligatory hiding in front of the old bill, and then when I got outside, if you get caught again, you're going to get another hiding. So that was it really. We never really got chastised by once we got home. It was just one of those things.
Going into a police station for the first time, was that not quite scary, Terry? Was that not something that would put the fear of God into you and think, oh, I don't really want to be spending my time in places like this?
No. My biggest fear was my dad coming down and giving me an hiding for bunking off school or getting caught. A police station really was just somewhere, you could put your head down for a few hours. We were young, we knew that we'd spend 3 or 4 hours there and then let us go. It never held no fear whatsoever.
Mm. Obviously, as you got a little bit older, you ended up being taken into care. Is that right?
Yeah. After being the main breadwinner in my family, because I got two sisters and a brother who have never been in trouble, never been in care. For some reason, my mum chose me to go out and do the things I did. So I got into a lot of trouble at school. I think that was mostly down because I felt quite embarrassed because I had dyslexia. That really got me into a lot of trouble. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah, I think for me it was quite hard because being as I said, being a breadwinner, and for her to wake up one day and say, listen, pack a bag of stuff. I'm going to drop you off somewhere and I'm going to pick you up later on. And then I found myself in a kids' home for the next 4 years. I think that was a massive shock to me, because the person I loved the most, the person I looked up to, the person who taught me everything, just abandoned me. So that had a massive impact on my life. It made me really angry. It made me, just made me the person I was. I never had no empathy after that. I think after that day, that was the catalyst for me just to give up on society, give up on everything, because the person I love more than anything in the world, it just threw me under the bus.
Did you ever find out the reason that happened, Terry?
Pardon?
Did you ever find out the reason that you were put into care?
Oh yeah, you know what? I was always in trouble at school. I was always getting kicked out of school. I didn't realise at the time, but I suffered from dyslexia. But all that, but until I knew that, I was just very disruptive in school. So that then had a knock-on effect. The social workers got involved, and then all of a sudden they decided that maybe the best place for me was not to be in my home, but to be in care. And the next thing I knew, I was placed in care.
What was it like those first few weeks, in a children's home? I mean, I remember the children's homes of the 70s and 80s, and there were kids living on top of kids, a lot of bad kids and naughty kids together. I mean, what was the experience like for you?
Yeah, it was daunting, first going in there, because I was lied to going in there, I was expecting to go home that evening. It's only when the evening came and they said, listen, you're staying here and you're going to be here for a very long time. That's when it really dawned on me. The other kids were a lot like me. They were quite angry, quite aggressive. There was a lot of violence in the home. I can remember trying to get out of there that evening, and 2 members of staff came in and one held me and one smashed me in the face. and said, listen, you know, this is the way we play the game here. You either adhere to our rules or you get an hiding, you know, and this is what happened. You know, when someone, when, you know, I grew up to respect our elders, you know, and when all of a sudden you got a grown man, and I think I was 11 or 12 then, punching me in the face, that was an eye opener. You know, not just once. I'm talking about 3 or 4 times, and a good kicking, and locking me in a room, and that was normal for these people. You know, so you know, going to a home really wasn't something that I liked. You know.
Yeah. Something which is for any child.
Yeah, I think, you know, going to, you know, it's got a certain smell, a certain atmosphere there. You know, you when you're in a home, you got your family, you got your so-called love of your parents, but all of a sudden you're in an empty room. You're just your thoughts, and known that, you know, that the life you had is gone, and then no matter how much you try to get back to it, it ain't gonna happen. You know, and as a young kid of 11 years old, it was frightening. You know, I'm not gonna lie. It was you know, you know, it did make me scared. I was scared. It made me more scared of getting beaten up by an adult. But you know, it's something I got used to after a few months.
I read in interview, Terry, I think it was a newspaper interview, that you were removed from the children's home when you got a girl pregnant a little bit later on.
Yeah. Well, I got kicked out of that particular first stage home, and then I got put in Stanford House. I ended up stabbing one of the staff there, and then they kicked me out of there, and then I ended up in a place called Greenacres in Wiltshire. You know, back in them days, it wasn't about uniting you with your family. It was about sending you 100 miles away and keeping you away from them. So I was quite fortunate that when I got there, it was a mixed home. There was 3 or 4 girls there, and you know, I was a young kid, and you know, I'd never even experienced sex up until that age. And unfortunately, the girls were quite experienced. They were 15, 16 years old. I was quite a big lad, and then all of a sudden I found the joys of love or the joys of sex, and I was at it like a rabbit. You know, unfortunately, I got one of the girls pregnant after a year, and I got kicked out of there, and I got shipped back to London. I think all in all, you know, the course of going to the first home and leaving there, I think I was about 14 and a half, 15 years old, and I ended up in a flat in Swiss Cottage. With 2 other guys, both of them in their 20s. I think one was 20, one was 24, and these guys were hardened criminals as far as I was concerned. You know, I'd left the home. I'd been put in care, and now all of a sudden I'm in another care home with 2 guys who used to go out doing armed robberies every night, and encouraged me to do likewise.
Before we get on to robberies, you mentioned that you stabbed somebody at the previous home. What was that about?
Well, you know, I'd been assessed. You know, I think after 8 or 9 months of being there, you know, I was assessed to go to a community home, and I felt a bit of a grief because, you know, I spent 8 months there thinking I was going to go home, and all of a sudden this guy's come in. I had my social worker there and a few people, and they said, "Look, you're not going home. You're going to listen." I said, "No, I ain't going nowhere." And where it was in like our eating room, our dining hall, and there was knives, forks, and everything there. So what I did, I just grabbed hold of it. I think it was the knife, and I just stabbed him in the shoulder, and I tried to get out of there. I made it to the front gate. Unfortunately, they were a little bit quicker than me, and I found myself back in the CP, which was a little lockup for kids. And I spent a few months in there before they decided to ship me out to Wiltshire. To Greenacres.
So obviously, taking us back to the Swiss Cottage days and moving in with these 2 guys who were hardened criminals, as you described them. You know, what was the first bit of work that you went on with those guys?
I think the first one I went back to when I was in a home in Swiss Cottage. I looked out onto the post office, and I remember the guy used to come and drive there in the mornings, and used to open the back door, leave his car there, and then come out for all the supplies. And I always thought, you know, one day I'm gonna do that guy. I know it's crazy. I was only a young kid, But when I got offered to do these robberies, these guys were going in the front door, and it was half off. But you know, they were coming out sometimes with money, but the majority of the time the guys weren't giving them no money. So I said, listen, you know, I've got a post office that I know that is doable. So all I did, I put a jacket on, took a little sawn off with me. One of the guys stayed in the car, and one of them came with me. But as soon as the guy pulled up, he went in there. I walked in behind him, you know, told him what I was there for, and just wrapped, you know, we tied him up. We sat him in the toilet, and then I went into the cage. And in them days, you had the time locks on the front of the safe, and I think it went off about 8:45. I looked up and see about 10 or 15 people waiting to come into the post office, and just sort of boxed off, went in and emptied the safe. For me, it was really easy. You know, it's like, you know, it was like taking candy from a baby. You know, as I said, I suffer from dyslexia. I thought I was stupid, and all of a sudden, you know, I got 3,000 or 4,000 quid in my pocket for doing something that was fairly easy. You know, I found something that I was actually quite good at. And over the course of a few months or a few years, I sort of, you know, we went out once or twice a week doing post office, building societies, a couple of banks we did. I went over the counters in them, and it was brilliant. And then all of a sudden, I had a nice little place in Hampstead. I've gone home one day, and next thing I knew, I had this really funny feeling. And as I opened my door, the place just exploded with old Bill, with guns and everything else. I got smashed in the face, smashed in the bollocks. My legs were taken from me, and all I got was don't fucking move. And for me, that was the first time I actually saw what I was doing is actually wrong. You know, the severity of what I'd actually done. It was like a game, you know, it was cat and mouse. I was under the impression if I didn't hurt anyone, it was okay. But I didn't realise that I was actually terrorising people. You know, walking in with a sawn-off shotgun as a 17, 18-year-old kid, you know, with balaclavas and big jackets on, you know, it's quite intimidating, but I never saw it. And I think it was at that moment when I got nicked that I actually realised this ain't a game. And I was heading to prison, you know, and this would be the first real stretch I would do.
Just looking at the robbery process, you know, I think nowadays, you know, you've just got smackheads who are going in, you know, with, you know, replica pistols and essentially holding up, you know, the local general dealer for like 100 quid. But your robberies, there were post offices, banks, there were targeted robberies. Was there a lot of preparation went into it, Terry?
Oh yeah. You know, back in them days, it was really easy to, you know, you could go and nick a car in 5 seconds. You know, I can remember Grenaders when they first came out, the petrol cap. If you undone the petrol cap and took the key mechanism out and went and got a key cut for it, it was actually the same key as the ignition. And the Grenaders at them times were the fastest cars, and that's why robbers used them, because they were so easy to nick. Preparation, the cars, we had to go and nick the cars. We spent time looking at you know, who worked there, how many people, where the police station was, the nearest police station. Sometimes we would just smash the window next door to the post offices or something and see what the response time was. You know, and normally they would, you know, with 5, maybe 10, 15 minutes. We knew we had 5 or 10 minutes to go in there. It was pretty basic, pretty easy.
Did you rely on markers, people giving you information about things? Was there ever any of that? No.
You know, as a young kid, we thought we knew everything. You know, I used to go and look at somewhere. I'd see the, you know, work out the getaways, work out where to put the cars, and I'll just call it a day. You know, I was actually, you know, for me it was really easy. I just took to it like a duck to water. So you know, it was just normal. You know, the preparation was easy. Doing them was even easier, and getting away with it and spending the money was a hazardous point, because you know you never know. You know, whether at the end of the day you're going to be nicked. You know, but 9 out of 10 times we got away with it. Was there an adrenaline for you, Terry? I don't think I ever loved doing them. I don't think there was that massive adrenaline rush. I think as a kid it was just a necessary thing for me to do. I think as I got older and I got better at it, there was a certain amount of camaraderie with the guys I was working with. There was that euphoria of power. yeah, and just doing, for me, the harder the job, the more satisfaction I got out of it. It was like a twisted sense of euphoria. That I used to just love the fact that I could actually go and do something that most people wouldn't even dream about, which is quite warped when you think about it. But to me, I thought it was normal.
I've spoken to a lot of people who were involved in your profession over the years, and what seems always striking to me is that you always have your set team that you work with. Was that the case with you?
I think back in the early days, I think the guys that I was working with at that time, the two guys, they were just there. I never knew them. They were just there, living in that flat. I'd done it. As when I came out of prison the first time, I then picked the guys I wanted to work with. These are guys I met in prison. These are guys that I formed relationships with and I trusted. And then we went from there, and then we worked together. But you don't just go and work with anyone. You have to pick. You got to pick your right team. You got to pick guys that are trusted, that are seasoned, and people that are not going to roll over the minute they get nicked.
What was the hardest robbery that you were involved with? The most difficult one?
You know what? I think they were all difficult. I think difficult is probably the wrong choice of words. It was all pretty. Doing a robbery is probably one of the easiest things you're going to do. Doing a van, doing a robbery, it's pretty easy. For me, I think Verizon in King's Cross, when we went in there, it was owned by JP Morgan. I think they had eight security guards, 8 to 11 security guards at any one time in there. That was, for me, a high-risk job, but also it was the most satisfying simply because there was quite a lot of teams that actually looked at it and said, you know what, it's too much of a risk, it's too high risk, it's just not worth doing. But at that time, if you were doing computer chips and computer robberies, the insurance dictated you can only have like £350,000 in there's worth of equipment. So the carve up was pretty minimal. 100 grand, you'd be lucky to take 75 quid out of there. So to actually look at a bit of work or a job, knowing full well that there was 4, 5 or 10 million pounds worth of motherboards in there, for me was like a red rag to a bull. And so when we went down there, it was looking at it, looking at the security guards, looking at the floors. I thought I relished the opportunity to go and do it. It was just, for me, it was something I was really looking forward to.
Let's go back to that first major arrest where the police all came in and they were mob-handed and you were getting arrested for this major robbery. What was it like going through the court process first of all? I mean, was that a bit daunting for you?
I think we just took it in a stride. Back in them days, you went to court every week. I think for me, it was just a drudgery. Having to pack all my gear every week, get in the sweatbox, go to court. You're up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You're in a room all day with all your co-Ds or just yourself, and then you're getting back at 8 o'clock at night. And you're doing it every single week. That to me was mind numbing. When I first got arrested, being sentenced was a relief because now I had an end game. I think I got that the first 4 years when I was 17 years old. I went to Ashford. That was quite an experience because you had every young guy from every different area there. It was like a warehouse of the worst of the worst. And the violence was unbelievable. What I remember walking in the first day, and me and my pals, we had a tear-up with another little firm, just because we come from North London. So so it started the first day we get in there. I think we were there 8 months. I spent about 4 or 5 months down the block. I had a bit of a grief with one of the screws. Ended up nutting him. That then brought me into conflict with all the screws, who then decided to make my stay there a living nightmare. I can remember coming out the governor's office and just getting a month down the block, because they can only give you a month at a time, and you've got to go to outside court to get an extra couple of months. And I can remember coming out of there, and it was about 500 or 600 yards to the cells. And as soon as I walked out the governor's office and the door shut, they just waved me in and they dragged me from there, and they kicked the shit out of me basically all the way to the cells, and then they grabbed me in my arms and legs and swung me through. They whacked my head on the door, my legs, and I ended up on a heap on the floor. And luckily for me, then they had a bed that used to be nailed down, so I could pull myself under it. That was my saving grace. It was quite a hostile place. I hate every minute down there, but I suppose like anyone, when you've been in the block for a few months and you see the mentality of the screws back in then, so they were all ex-army. They used to wait for new guys to come down there, and it was like fun. A young kid who was 17 years old would come down there, and they'd say, make a bed pack, and the kid would make a really nice bed pack, and then they would say, that's shit, and then weigh him in. But it became like, it just became normal down there for us. Like you're seeing it. I can remember being on the receiving end quite a few times and hating it. But when someone else was actually on the receiving end, it actually was a relief that I wasn't on the receiving end. But it's also when you met these guys on exercise, there was that sort of, we've been there, we're all one now, and so we joined together as a force. And these are the guys I met through the system that I actually worked with when I came out. So so even though we were getting abused, getting beaten, we was also forming really good strong bonds through our torture and through the abuse that we received. So so instead of rehabilitating us, it made us more hardened criminals.
How long did you? What was your first you got?
Well, my first sentence was 4 years. I don't know if you've ever been to Owsbury Young Offenders. It's quite a frightening place. You got young kids doing life sentences there. It's an old Victorian building, all the metal stairwells and the nets. And I can remember walking there and thinking, God. And I walk into my cell for the first time on the ones and looking up, and the windows were about 6-7 foot off the floor. So I can remember running up and jumping on the bars and pulling myself up, and all I could see was the top of a tree outside. And this was going to be my home for the next couple of years. It was, I had a bed, a corner unit, a jug of water, and a bowl, and a piss pot, and this was my home, and not even a radio. It was a daunting place to be, but like anything, you get used to it. It becomes your home.
Did you have anybody visit you? You were estranged from your family at such a young age. I mean, was that something that you had?
Well, no. I had a few visits from my dad, which then cemented our relationship years later, because I knew that I could rely on him. Yeah. But I never had many visits.
Yeah, I was going to say, doing time, is it something that you, forgetting about the violence and being down the block, is it something that you found easy? And how did you occupy your mind when, you were locked in your cell for such an extreme amount of time?
I think it's funny, when you first go in prison, you're always trying to get out. You're always trying to get out, working on the landings, like whether it's mopping, doing a job. But when you've been in there for a few months, it's about, you just want to keep away from everyone, because all it is violence. All it is reinforcement of crap. The same jokes, the same everything. It's funny how you can be in a cell and all of a sudden 24 hours is gone. You're thinking about outside, you're reading, you learn to deal with boredom. And I think the beneficial lesson I learned is that I had to accept the things I couldn't change. No matter what was happening outside, I couldn't do anything about it. And I think that was a good lesson for me, because I saw lots of guys trying to sort out all their problems outside from inside a cell, and it used to drive them mad. So I learned very early on as a kid that no matter what was going on out there was nothing I can do to change it. So that was a good lesson. I think isolation can be good and can be bad. It depends on the person. If you're strong, I used to train every day. I had a routine. I used to train all in the mornings, train in the afternoons, and train in the evening. And then I started to read. Up until that point, I was a very poor reader, and I started to read quite a lot. And it was a form of escapism. So I could escape through the books. And I think given given it opportunity, I think it enhanced my life, believe it or not. I'm stuck in a cell. Most people, if you take Buddhism, they go into the mountains to find themselves. So to be in a cell, locked alone just for your thoughts or company, was a way of finding yourself. I found myself as a kid. I never resolved anything because I never had the tools to resolve it. But it wasn't that bad. We got through it.
Were you planning the future, or were you planning to be, better professional, not get caught the next time?
I think anyone that goes in prison has this. We have these moments of clarity where we're going to go and start a family, we're going to get a job, we're going to get a nice home and 2.2 kids and live happily ever after. Unfortunately, the reality is when we come out, if you haven't got an education, it's only one thing you can go back at it. And that's going back at it. We never had the opportunities back in them days with rehabilitation where you could go to university or go to college. We were lucky if we got a few cowboy books from the library. So there was nothing really set up for us to change our lives. Maybe a paint and decorating course. I came out, and within a very short space of time, I was back at it.
So if you were back on the street, was it back to the same kind of business, post offices and banks? What was your next jobs?
For me, it was, armed robbery was out of the equation. Now that was for me. I had enough. So I went on the jump ups. We used to follow vans and lorries into London. When I used to pull up, we used to pull up and empty them. I don't know if you know what a sign up is. We would
let people watching. Well,
what we'd do, we'd follow a lorry and we'd find if it looked like it was lost and that. Normally you can see because they're stopping here and there. They got their A to Z there. One of the guys was a bit older in our firm, and he would just go up to him and say, "Right, listen, you look lost, mate. Where you going?" And the guy would chuck down his paperwork, and he'd look at the address where the guy's going, and he'd go, "Yeah, I know what it is." You go straight down there, do a right, do a left, and send him in the wrong direction. We would then go to the place where he was supposed to deliver and park outside. And when he pulled up, we'd say, "We walk straight. What time do you call this? We're going for dinner now, or we're going for breakfast." And he'd go, "Well, I've got to get this offloaded because I've got to get to my next job." So we say, "Listen, man, we'll be back in an hour." And he'd go, "Oh, please, I need to get unloaded." And we say, "Okay, look, we'll go like Steve, Tone, go and empty that one onto the floor here, and we'll bring it in after." And he'd go, "Thanks a lot," and then we'd sign off on it. So we'll empty it onto the floor. He would then drive off at his Larry, and then we would load it into our vans and we would disappear. I think I'd done it for about 5 or 6 years. It was a real great job. I loved it, because it was different every day. There's quite a lot of variety. You had cigarette vans, we had computers, we had everything, drinks, you name it, came through London. And we just took advantage of people, unfortunately. And it gave us a pretty good living. We're nicking maybe 2,000 quid a day. And we were living really good as young guys.
You mentioned the money situation, and you said that the job is easy to do, but it's the spending the money that can be difficult, and that's true. It's dirty money. So how did you spend the money, and did you manage to put any away, and did you manage to get yourself on the property ladder, etc.?
Yeah, but I bought a couple of houses. They got confiscated. I think with that lifestyle comes so many flaws. I can remember having a young family then. I had a couple of girls. I had a really nice girlfriend, and I was going out to work to provide for them. I wanted a nice house, I wanted nice cars, I wanted everything for my kids and my daughters and everything else. But unfortunately, that lifestyle that I was doing dictates that I've got to go out and meet people. I've got to go drinking, I've got to go socialising, and that leads to womanising, drugs and everything else. So what started off as something that was like a Robin Hood and helping my family out turned into something really shit. I turned into a bit of a monster. So the more money I had, the more arrogant I got. Unfortunately, with people like me, money breeds contempt. Money is I don't know, it's like the root of all evil. It gives you a massive ego. If you think you can do anything because you've got money, then nothing can stand in your way. And that's how I was then. I had so much money, I became quite an arrogant prick, to be honest.
It takes to be able to admit that, Terry, and that's the reason I wanted to get you onto the podcast. Let's look at the Ocean's 11 heists, because everybody who's a moviegoer will have watched the films and be wondering what this story's all about. And anybody who does any research on you on the internet will see your name attached to that. So tell us a little bit about it and how it came about.
Well, I was sitting in prison. I'd just been nicked for I think I just got 6 years for a load of cocaine. I was sitting in there. I'd lost they confiscated my house. My other girlfriend had taken the other one, and I was quite angry, And I can remember thinking, how do I get it back really quick? And I just decided that when I got out, I was gonna set up a little team, and we were gonna just dress as Old Bill. We weren't gonna use guns. We were gonna have the full uniform, the cars, the vans, the warrants, everything else, and we were gonna pass ourselves off as a fast response robbery squad. And that's what we did. We came out. I got a little team together. One of them is ex-army, guys that I've grown up with all my life, who I trust with my life. And then we started doing computer warehouses. The Ocean's 11 tag came for us simply because we had a dog as we took Alsatians with us as well. So we would pull up we say Verizon because that's the one of the ones that I've been nicked for. Yeah. So we would say the scenario was we'd pull up, we'd have a warrant to search the place. We'd go in there and we'd say until we find out who everyone else was, who they were. For my protection and my officer's protection, I'm going to cover everyone. Or we would go in there and say we believe there's drugs and firearms on the premises, and then we would do exactly the same. So our MO was we would go in there, serve warrants, and then they named us the Ocean's 11 gang because of the uniforms, the police uniforms. But we never took guns, we never took koshes, we never hurt anyone, and I think because of that, we were then deemed a real threat because, they couldn't come along and shoot us. If you go on a ready eye and you're doing robberies and you're nicking 5 or 6 million quid at a time, then it gives them a license to come and shoot you. So they I think the Old Bill felt a little bit of affront towards that. So what they did, they put a 70-strong team on us. I didn't notice at the time though. To capture us, they shut down all our buyers. They raided all our gas. They shut us down big time because we got a little bit too big for our boots, and it cost us. It cost us dearly.
What kind of money are we talking about? What kind of? I've seen the estimations, but I mean, what kind of money do you think you got away with those robberies?
I got a private prosecution against me for about 5 million quid. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I can't ever come into any money, or JP Morgan would have it off me. There's estimates of 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. They never got anything back. That's it really. I don't want to elaborate too much on it, but the thing is that they put a price on it. And they're probably near enough right, I'd imagine. Yeah.
I knew about the armed robbery, Terry, but the drugs was a surprise to me when I was doing a little bit of research on you. I mean, that's a big change, a big career change, isn't it? Going into drugs, and it's a different world. Certainly a different world now, but back in those days, it was a huge jump. Obviously, more prolific drugs were starting to become the currency on the streets. That's when it changed. Why did you get involved in drugs?
You know what? For me, it was just purely luck. Or unluck. We ended up nicking a lorry full of computers and booze, and the Old Bill swooped on us. I was lucky enough to get away. I slipped home, got my passport, and I got out of the country, and I ended up in Spain for a few friends of mine. And then I realised that it was actually a lot more profitable to go and buy puff and pack it and send it back to England. Then actually going robbing post offices and banks and all that crap. So, and also doing the jump ups. So I started over there. I started doing a few runs where I'd buy 50 or 100 key of puff. I'd pack it. I'd pick it up in Marbella or Coin, and I'd run up to Valencia, and I got a lorry, brought it back to England. I thought, oh, this is really great. You know, this is really easy. And then, you know, over the next couple of years, you know, I was nicking, like, doing 500 key every couple of months, and the money was just rolling in. So it was brilliant. So the money was good. The lifestyle was fantastic. I was in Marbella. You know, I had my family in England, which was bad because, you know, I couldn't have them out there. You know, so, you know, as I said before, the life dictated that I had to be there to earn the money, but I then had a separate life over there where I was drinking, I was womanizing, and I was just really being a proper shithead, you know. But I don't know if you've ever transported stuff back in them days when you drove up from Marbella to Spain. You had to go through all the roads, and you had the motorway there. Yeah. And what they did, they had roadblocks all the time. So, you know, the anxiety I felt, you know, going up there, because we'd leave at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. You got 400 or 500 key in the back of the motor. It's quite a feeling, you know. You got one guy in front, one guy at the back. We've got our phones, but you know what? So much can go wrong. There's so many variables. You know, but we drive up there, and I'd be sweating, and I'd be singing to myself roadblock or something, and then I'd see the old bill that the Guard of Seville they were back in them days. They all carried guns and all that, and if you got caught by them, they would either put one in you or they would give you a serious ID. So, you know, you're driving along, they would do a rolling roadblock where they would just pull over all the cars, and all of a sudden you'll be either a mile back, and I'll get a phone call saying pull over, pull off, or they were just about to pull up, start it, and I'd go random. And if it looked like they were going to pull me, my guy would be behind with British number plates, and he would speed up and come past me. So they would then go for him. I would then come off. It happened a few times. You know, it was a real easy life. Sun, sea, lots of birds, and one tragedy. You know, a friend of mine was doing a run, and he drove off a cliff in the middle of the night. So I had to leave Spain pretty sharpish because we all knew each other. I then moved to Amsterdam, got involved over there with the ecstasy, cocaine, doing the same sort of thing. I was working with some Serbian guys who are really good friends of ours, ex-military guys, Serbians and Yugoslavians. And for a few years, it was going really well. You know, nice restaurants, the clubs, you know, just the life was fantastic. We had a nice place. We had speedboats. We was living good. And then one of my pals who I was working with then got shot in the head, got killed, and the other one got crippled, got shot in the back. So, you know, luckily I was doing something at that time. I missed it, and you know, people were killing each other over there for 30 grand. You had a lot of Balkan countries coming into the game, the Russians and everything else. And where you had sort of honour amongst thieves, you could buy 20 or 30 key. You know, you were getting set up now for a key or whatever, because that key could buy you a house in Yugoslavia. That 2 key Charlie you could live on for 20 years. So, you know, so I decided that maybe it was time to come back to England. You know, so I ended up in France, and I ended up meeting some other people there. You know, doing some stuff, and I got into the cigarette game. Smuggling cigarettes. That went on for quite a while. That was quite an easy game. There was less palaver, less grief. You know, less violence. And unfortunately, I came back to England, and the old bill was on us. And I can remember going to drive up to a place in Cuffley, a little farm we had, and we used to pull the lorries on there. And I can remember my mate said, like, I can't drive this fucking van tail. So I used to drive it. I used to have a Shogun then. I said, take my Shogun, and I drive the lorry. Yeah. So I jumped in it, and I couldn't start it. So he went ahead of me, and you know, I could see him in the distance, and I got it started, and I can remember going after him, and the old bill waiting for me to pull in there. So my car had come through in my Jeep. Yeah. He had pulled into the farm, and just before I got there, a Land Rover came across, cut me off, went straight through the gates. Another one came from this side through the fence, The next thing, they all come out of everywhere, all guns, and all I saw was my mate and his young son. It was they all had like lights on them, red dots everywhere. And that was the end of that. They thought there was drugs on there. They thought because I was involved in it, there was drugs. Unfortunately, it was only cigarettes. So he ended up getting, I think, 12 months. I ended up getting a not guilty because they never had no fingerprints. They never had me, which is great, And that was really the end of it. I came back to Camden. I met a real nice girl whose sister was a celebrity, Sadie Frost.
Yeah.
And then I spent a bit of time just socialising with them lot for a little while. And then because I had the old bill on me for looking at me everywhere I went, So I sort of just live a normal life for about a year.
Yeah. Just looking, now to the long sentence that you got. 16 years, and to look at 16 years in prison. How do you even prepare mentally for that?
I think you just do. I didn't expect to get 16 years for a start with no guns.
And Ocean's 11.
Yeah. I think what it was because there was no guns, we just assumed that the sentences would be a lot lighter.
Yeah.
So I can remember all my pals getting nicked, and the old bill coming for me, and I was fortunate enough that I saw them coming. So my pals all got nicked, and I got nicked 9 months later because I was lucky enough. I saw the old bill coming. I went up on the roof, and I slipped for a year. But I waited for them all to get sentenced. They all went not guilty and got found guilty, and they all got 10s and 11s. So when I got caught, I just assumed that if I went guilty, I'd get 10 or 11 years. Unfortunately, when they did arrest me, they took me back to. I was in Pentonville. They took me on an ID parade, and I ended up whacking a couple of old bill and going over the wall. I slipped my handcuffs and went over the wall, and I got captured. So that, because I was the ringleader, because it was seen I was the one that done all the talking. The judge wanted to give me 23 years. That was quite a shock. So I went on a Newton hearing, and he said, like, I'm going to give you 9 years, but I'm going to make it up with these other sentences and make them consecutive. So there's no way that I could appeal for it because I got less than my mate. So it was shit. It wasn't a good feeling. I wasn't prepared for it, but I think, as we always said, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. So we mentally prepare ourselves with that ideology, which is really crap. But I think it's a case of just being resilient. We suffer hard knocks all our life, and just another sentence is another hard knock. I think I prepared myself from the minute I got sentenced, and I got back to the cell. I'd already calculated how long I had to do for good behaviour, everything else. And I just you just got to accept it. What else can you do? You either die or you live, and I'm a liver. So I decided to move on and just do it. I calculated I had to do just over 8 years, 8.5 years, and that was it. I think I worked it out in a few minutes, and I accepted it for what it was. I don't think anything came into the equation other than let's just get through this, and get out the other side in one piece mentally.
You had children at that time as well. They didn't realise what you did for a living, and you provided for them, you looked after them, of course you loved them, but they didn't know what you did, and that must have affected them greatly as well.
Yeah. You know what? It's probably one of my biggest regrets. Because I had an auction in a courier company, that I used to work with, and I was going to work every day. I gave the perception of going to work, so everyone thought I was a straight guy. So when I got nicked, it was quite a hard one for the kids. As they've grown up and they're all adults now. They've all got their own kids and their families. It was pretty one of the hardest things to explain to them why I wasn't there, why I split up with their mum, why I was such a shit. But you know what? They've come through it all right. The one good thing that I always justify my criminality with was the fact that I was able to, put my girls in school. When my girl went to university and college, they never done anything criminal. So they saw what I did, and they realised that what, this is not the way to go. So I suppose they learned lessons from me being away. So thank God they're all well adjusted. I suppose they're in years to come, they're all going to have their little, their little bits they got to deal with. Because having a father that's not there for them is quite an emotional thing. You can see some of them, they're detached, but they accept it for what it is. I suppose we'll have the conversation. We've had the conversations, but I imagine one day we'll sit down and have another conversation and see what happens.
The eureka in your life, the big change in your life, actually came with this sentence, though, because you were moved to HMP Grendon, and this is the reason really we've got you on the podcast, because you've written a fantastic book about the experience. And explain to people watching, what the difference between HMP Grendon and other prisons in the system is.
I think for me, is that Grendon is some way that you won't, the stories that I heard in Grendon, you'll never hear in a normal mainstream prison. The difference with it is that most mainstream prisons are just warehouses where nothing goes on, the same old crap all the time. And Grendon is somewhere where you can go and explore who you are, why you are the way you are, all your insecurities. It's a place where you can really look at every aspect of your life, from your childhood traumas, everything that you normalized will come to the forefront through the therapy you do. And being surrounded by some of the most dangerous men in the country, some of the most heinous crimes you could imagine, from rapists, paedophiles, child molesters, serial killers, you learn lots of lessons. I learned so many lessons there that made me a better person.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I wrote the book. Not, there are lessons to be learned for lots of people, but there was the images and the stories that I heard. The only way to get them images out and in a in a cathartically rewarding way was to write the book. So, and also to reinforce the lessons that I learned there, and also to pass some lessons on to other people. So that was one of the reasons I wrote the book. But once you read it, you'll understand that the image and the person that I created through being in care and the way I was brought up was not who I really was. I created this monster through the way I built myself up, the anger that came with that, and the violence that I was able to access at a moment's notice wasn't really me. I was capable of so many things, but you know what? There was always a part of me that was all right. That acted on a completely different level. But there was also a part of me that never understood empathy, never understood love. When you're abandoned as a kid, and I'm not using any excuses. No. But if you can't access empathy and the victimology of what you do to your victims, then you see it as normal. So Grendon gave me the opportunity to actually explore myself, explore the fact that I was brought up in a real crazy environment, and I was actually a victim of my own upbringing. But until I accessed that, I could never actually see what I'd done. So it was a moment. So when I started getting in touch with my feelings and my emotions, it was then I came to understand what I'd done and what I created, and that was then I was able to sort of unscrew my head and take all the shit out of it and start rebuilding it, and hopefully become a better person. Because it's only by dealing with the past that you're able to create a better future for yourself. I remember for many years, or for as long as I can remember, I was a statistic. Unfortunately, I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was special. I thought I was untouchable, above the laws that most people live their lives by. But I was statistically what I was supposed to be. I was a product of the care system. But after doing Grendon, I'm now statistically different. You know, I'm not the person that I was when I went in spite of a system that sets men up like me up to fail. So, you know, so Grendon for me opened up so many doors to get in touch with myself and actually just to create the new me, the new better version. Go on.
It's run as a democratic therapeutic community, Grendon, isn't it? So it gives you know the prisoner the opportunity to, like you've just explained really well there, you know, look at themselves and improve themselves, and that's clearly what's happened with you, Terry.
Yeah, it is. It's you know, it's probably one of the hardest experiences I've ever done. You know, I've done mainstream stream prison, and it was a breeze. You know, there's violence. I've seen people getting stabbed. I've seen people getting jugged with oil. And it was not as hard as actually going to Grendon. You know, I can remember walking in there because you have to sign a compact as soon as you walk in there, and that you can't use any violence. So when you take the only tool that I was ever good at was using violence out of the equation, I now had to start talking and articulating on a different level. So you know, Grendon was able to actually facilitate that for me, and which is you know, which I'm thankful for. You know, do you want me to explain to you the process?
Yeah, please do that. Over the hour. So.
Well, you know, when you first go, you have to go for a 12-week induction course. That's to see if you've got the aptitude to change. But in that 12 weeks, you start meeting people that you'd never normally speak to. You know, I can remember the first guy I met was a guy, I called him Birdan, and I won't mention their names. You know, he was in for strangling a young girl. And then, you know, trying to drown her in the canal. You know, that was the first 3 seconds of being inside. You know, another young guy I met, he had broke his kid's back and pelvis and left 95 bruises on her body and face. To someone like me, that was, you know, to be in their company was probably the hardest battle. You know, prison was really easy compared to the mental scars that Grendon actually gave me over that period. It was a struggle because on so many levels I really wanted to kill these guys, but you know, being around them, I learned so many things. I learned tolerance. So over that first 12 weeks, I learned to humanize the screws, because to actually read a paper in this place, you had to go into the office. So for years and years and years, I hated screws. I couldn't have a conversation with one. They were always the enemy. But Grendon had a way of just bringing you in. And the first step is you read the papers in the office and you had to go in there. You then had to talk to the officers while you was in there. So over a 3 or 4 week period, that then sort of gave me the opportunity to humanize them. So instead of them being the enemy now, they then became human beings. So that was a massive breakthrough for me, you know, because now people that I hated more than anything, authority, I was now talking to and humanizing. The other guys that I met there on them first 12 weeks, you know, they taught me tolerance. Even eating at a dining table with people after eating in myself for years was an experience, you know, because I was normally just go back to my cell, shut the door. So to learn to eat with people again and socialise was quite a feat. It was quite, you know, it was a moment. And then for the first time in my life, I was given a notepad and told that I must write down every feeling and thought I had regarding who I met and how I felt about them, which was great, because I wanted to say so much. But after 12 weeks of writing and looking over what I wrote, you know, I didn't start to realise that, you know, how my thinking process was. So, you know, so the whole experience was very cathartic. For one, it made me look at the way my thought process, because, you know, we act on our faults. You know, normally if I have a fault, I normally act on it. But to actually have a fault and write it down and not act on it was actually something I never ever experienced, because I was always had this voice in my head saying, just go and act now. You know, instant gratification. So being able to write it down and just read it and then go and digest it, so to speak, you know, gave me a whole new tool. You know, where I didn't have to act on my thoughts straight away. So that was quite good. That was the first 12 weeks. I acted myself and I was myself. We had one murder in the first 4 weeks. We had one guy got killed there. So that was quite a moment. I can remember coming back to the wing and thinking, God, this is one crazy place. But it also was a moment up until then I actually wanted to go. But when I saw all these as I call them in there, you know, most of them are quite deviant. You know, the rapists, the paedophiles, and the child killers. When I saw that they was all afraid and they were really upset and everything else, it actually sort of spurred me on to stay there, because I realised that if I stayed there, I could start to articulate responses to actually engage with them better, but also at the same time explore what they did and also help them find who they are. And it's actually quite rewarding. So, you know, I managed to have the aptitude to get through. I think there was 6 or 7 guys that came with me that none of them got through because they never had the capability to actually move from the induction process to a main wing, was where you did the main therapy. So getting a wing was actually quite it was quite a moment. You know, I felt for the first time in my life I've actually achieved something from my own ability, as instead of using a gun, instead of using violence, I've actually achieved something by getting through. So I looked upon it as an achievement. I actually done it. So moving forward and getting onto the wing was seen as the first stage of my my sort of rehabilitation back to being a normal person.
Amazing story, that, and you know, to have the mental strength, it has to be said, to go through that kind of program and come out the other side, you know, it's a testament to you, Terry. Obviously, when you did eventually come out of prison, you know, you came out to family and people willing to give you a chance and to help you. I think the big striking thing for me is, though, that you know, you stopped drinking and didn't take drugs, and I think you've been clean for how long now?
14 years.
Wow.
It's 14 years since I've had a drink. You know, I think about 7, 8 years since I had a cigarette, and any drugs, it's got to be for just over 11 years now.
Well done.
But I think, as I say, you know, when you do therapy and you start understanding why you are the way you are. You know, for many years I tried to pack up drinking, smoking, drugs, and womanizing. But you know what? Every time I got out of prison or I came back to England, I'd done exactly the same thing, because I never dealt with the issues that affected me the most inside.
Yeah.
But the minute I actually dealt with them, and you know, they never go. You know, I'm not gonna. You know, they don't go, but the anger dissipates, the understanding comes through, and you just start functioning on a completely different level. And I found myself coming out of prison and not having to self-medicate. You know, I didn't need to go drinking. I didn't need to go and take drugs. I didn't need to reinforce my life by mixing in them circles with the same people. So, you know, I think by doing Grendon, it probably saved my life. It set me up for the new me.
Yeah, fantastic. It's an amazing story. You got involved with a campaign when you came out of prison as well, which I'd just like you to talk about before we give the book a plug and finish the interview. More Than My Past. Tell us about that.
I think, yeah, more of my part is just to explain to people that, you know, we've done our time. You know, we've got really good life experiences, but we get blamed. You know, we do our sentence, we come out, and we can't get our jobs because of our past. And we're trying to tell people that we're more than our past. So we share our life experiences. We then talk to employers or employees to change the perception of an ex-criminal. You know, most of the guys that I know that come out of prison, you know, they don't want to go and spend the rest of their lives living on the street. They don't want to spend the rest of their lives thieving. They've got so much to give back. It's just being able to give an opportunity. I think if you give someone some self-worth, you give someone somewhere to live and a job, I think they will then pay you back in spades. You know, literally. You know, if you give them nothing, like is the case at the moment, coming out of prison, nowhere to live, no job, and living on someone's settee, that's not a very good start. So we try to, with the Forward Trust, as I'm an ambassador now, to actually just convince employees to give these guys a chance. And you know what they do? They give 110%. And the track record up to date is 101%. Every guy that comes on there and gets a job goes forward with his life and changing it. Do you know, we talk about change. Everyone has got the capability to change and the desire to change. But unless you've actually got the job, the home, and the support network around there, you're just going to go back. It doesn't matter how much desire you have. unless you've got these three fundamental things, you're always going to go back. And it doesn't matter who you are. The only people I know that change actually they only change because they replace their whole life with a new life. And if that life is involved somewhere to live and something to earn money by, they will move forward and they will prosper and they will show their true worth. And that's what the Forward Trust is. I also started Camden Against Violence as well to help kids in the community because we had 8 killings in the last couple of years here. And what I do, I go around to schools and I go around to community centres and I tell families and I tell the communities not to feed into a belief system that protects the murders of our kids. If someone's raping your daughter or your kids, you'll go and report it and you'll get it sorted. If someone's breaking into an old person's over there, you're going to protect that burglar. If someone stabs your kid, you're going to protect them because you feel that that's an honour. You're protecting an honour code. Because grasses get snitches, they say, yeah? But you know what? For me, there's no honour in stabbing an unarmed kid. There's no honour in stabbing or shooting an unarmed person. I was brought up to fight with my hands, but we seem to have slipped into this thing where it's actually acceptable to kill a young child with a knife and actually be someone you can look up to. So I spend all my time going around saying, listen, that belief system only enhances them and only supports their narrative. What we need to do as a community is put that aside and accept it for what it is. Shit, it's an honour code that doesn't really work. So we got to abandon that, and we got to work together as a community, and we got to say, this is unacceptable. Drug dealing on my street is unacceptable. Hiding knives in my kids' playground is unacceptable, and stabbing my sons and daughters is even more unacceptable. So that's the message I give out now, and it's been quite a journey over the last couple of years. So. Giving something back has been so much more rewarding than actually taking. So I'm in a really good place.
It's amazing stories. Yeah, to do it now is more commendable, and I've heard that from many people. I mean, Charles Salvador, who's inside still at this moment in time, supports. He always supports these anti-knife crime things. Vic Dark's doing it. I know, again, someone else who was quite prolific on the street back in the day. And it's I think if people like yourselves can get the message out to the youngsters, it's very important. What would you say to any youngster who's watching now and is involved or is contemplating, going down, your former path where robbery or dealing drugs? What would you say to them if he was sat right in front of you, or she was sat right in front of you now?
Do you know what I'd say? If you want to aspire to doing 20 years in prison, carry on doing what you're doing. Because that's the only outcome of your life. If you want to aspire to being someone who's going to have a nice family, a nice home, and your own kids, and live a productive life that's going to really be beneficial to you, then follow that guy there who's working. Because crime is all glamorous on the outside, but it comes at a massive cost, not just to your liberty, to your mental health, and to your family. And most of the kids I speak to actually come away from talking to me and they realise that, crime is not as glamorous as that most people make out. It's a real shit life, and I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy.
Fantastic. I could talk to it. I just wanted to look to the book, Living Amongst the Beasts, Rise and Fall of the Grendon Experiment. Basically, people can buy that, of course, at bookshops. You can buy it on Amazon. Is there anything else you want to give a shout out to, Terry? I mentioned.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it was. We had to change the book, so now it's out in 2 forms because the prisoners wouldn't allow it in because of the title for some strange reason. Okay. Even though they said the book's content was okay and it was great and it was an educational book, I brought this one out. This is called Grendon's Therapy: The Inside Story. They've now accepted this as okay. So we found compromise. Maybe we agreed to disagree, but doing therapy helped me to actually not to make a stand. So I've redone it. So yeah. I'm pleased with that. We've also got a couple more books coming out, but I'll let you know later.
No, that's Terry. It's been fantastic. Hour or so speaking to you. I wish you all the best. And listen, keep doing what you're doing because it's very important that the youth of the day listen to people like yourself. And for all the misdemeanors and the demons that you've had in your past, you're making a difference now, mate. Well done.
Steve, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all your listeners. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, brother.